Hello guys, welcome back to the class. Okay, though the video is little late, I'm sorry for that. But then to continue with the previous class, where we were discussing the object-oriented programming paradigms, and so the video would explain the entire OOPS programming concepts and its important features. So here we go. Now the object-oriented programming is, as I told you in the beginning in the previous classes, that it is to organize, it is to represent, it is to conceptualize certain objects, real-time objects, real-time entity in terms of certain program, isn't it? To represent it in the software form. So there there are few points which we need to understand when we devise such kind of representation to represent an object. Now I'll go one by one. Firstly, the type of the object you want to define, whether you want to define a mobile, whether you want to define a tree, whether you want to define a dog, whether you want to define a student or a teacher or any kind of real life real time entity you wanted to represent. That representation is totally dependent on the programmer's definition. How do I as a programmer define that particular object, and that is how that particular object is going to behave, isn't it? You cannot expect an object to behave which is not defined in the program. So हामीले आफै we have to devise those behaviors so that the object behaves like that. That's first thing you must understand. All right. Now second thing is we as a programmer must be able to instantiate. We must be able to create certain objects as and when it is required. हामी आफै गर्नु पर्यो त्यो पनि. That programmer also should be able to define and create the instance of the object that we need. That's also in our purview. And the third thing you must understand is the interaction between the objects. Now we may have different types of objects, like student objects are there and teacher objects are there, isn't it? And how does the teacher and the student communicate or interacts with each other? That also should be defined by the programmer himself. We as a programmer must be able to define that how do they communicate. They communicate through message passing, they communicate through the functions, they communicate through the object linking. How do they communicate? I as a programmer have to decide these things also. Now, I hope you have understood these three things. Now, next, what we are going to see is when we are talking about object-oriented programming, we must see and have a thorough understanding of basic features of concepts of OOPS. We'll go one by one to that. Firstly, what is an object? Now we keep on talking about object and real-time entity and real thing and a physical thing you wanted to represent. What exactly is that object? You must understand that. Now, in order to understand that, you must have a knowledge that an object definitely will be consisting of certain attributes that defines that particular object. Like mobile is defined by certain its own attributes. A laptop, if you want to see, it is defined by your own attributes. You as a student is defined by your own attributes. You as a CCCT student is defined by your own attributes, and the same batch of student who is studying in ATTC will be defined by their own attributes, isn't it? That's how it has to be defined. And next thing you must understand is you must also be able to define the behaviors of that particular objects. Now, how does it behaves? Now what we talked about behaviors in the previous class is when I change the value of certain attributes, when I change certain properties, like I'm sleeping, when a teacher is sleeping, teacher is at showing the behavior of somebody who is sleeping, isn't it? But then he is a teacher. When teacher is a teaching, and teacher is behaving like a teacher, he is teaching. And when teacher is playing in the ground, then he is a player. But then he is a teacher, but then he behaves like a player. So play, eat, sleep, all that verb kind of activities that shows your behaviors, and all that noun kind of attributes are known as properties of that particular object that defines it, like breed, color, hungry, tired, all that are your not exactly noun. Noun are the dog, isn't it? Noun are the object, but noun defined by the certain, if you want to see in English, there is certain adjectives, certain definitions like breed, color, hungry, tired. They are all attributes of a dog. Similarly, if I talk about a bank account will definitely have an account number, its owner, its balance. All that things are attributes. But bank account does not have a dress, isn't it? A bank account does not have a ISSN number. Why? Because in the first we have seen that this programmer has to define attributes, isn't it? Able to define the object in my own way. So bank account ma timarlai you don't need a dress, you don't need a dress. So I am supposed to define it. Similarly, behaviors ma bank account ma hera, there are withdraw, deposit, something like that. Update, delete. I can delete account. I can create account, isn't it? I can delete. I can update that account. I can renew that particular account. I can put that account into suspension, something like that. So these are all the behaviors of the particular object which we are supposed to create. So what is the object? So objects are nothing but it's a collection of behaviors and attributes together in a single entity. That's known as object. Now what we are talking about, dog, bank manager, bank, yes, they are all object. But then, yes, they are a real-time object. But in a software engineering concept, in a OOPS paradigm, what we are interested in representing a particular object, a software object, we call it as here. Software object भन्नुको मतलब त्यो रियल टाइम अब्जेक्टलाई चाहिँ रियल वर्ल्ड अब्जेक्टलाई चाहिँ हामीले के गर्छ, त्यसलाई चाहिँ सफ्टवेयर मोडलिङ गर्नु पर्यो, सफ्टवेयर मोडलिङ गर्नु पर्यो, देन ओन्ली इट बिकम्स अ सफ्टवेयर अब्जेक्ट. सो त्यो कसरी गर्नु भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ OOPS भन्ने प्रोग्रामिङ कन्सेप्ट, प्रोग्रामिङ मेथोडोलोजी, प्रोग्रामिङ प्याराडिम विल गिभ यु सर्टेन मेथोडोलोजी that will give you certain tools, certain mechanisms, certain procedures to follow so that you can model it in terms of a software object. So that is what is written here. You can go through this. Software objects like real-time object also have a attributes and behavior. हामीले बनाएको, हामीले गर्नु पर्यो. So see, your best bet is to think in terms as close as possible to a real world. Exactly real world represent गर्नु पर्दैन, as close as real world. Trying to be tricky or cool with your system is almost always the wrong thing to do it. Remember, you cannot beat mother nature. So mother nature ले जस्तो production गर्छ is a real time entity हो. So त्यसलाई चाहिँ जित्नु नखोज्नु कहिले पनि. But then you can go as close as possible. त्यो complex बनाएर bank manager लाई, bank account लाई complex बनायो के हुन्छ? People will not come, isn't it? People will not come and bank को income हुँदैन, something like that. So what we are modeling, what we are trying to use using OOPS is we are trying to build certain software model that follows OOPS structure. We are representing those real-time objects. Okay, हामीले पढेको dog is a real-time which can smell, which you cannot represent here. something like that, which can eat. Eat you can give meat, you can give bhat, you can give dal, sabji. So, but then we are trying to represent that dog in terms of a software object. So what we are concerned is, we are concerned about representing those real-time object as a software object. Now here you can see same thing. It is written in on a better explained way. You have your withdraw, you have your deposit, balance and number. They are all attributes and behavior. It is one account, you have one more account, you have one more account, and all that account is kept in a bank. So the object is a collection of attributes and a behavior that operates on them. So variables in an object are known as attributes, and the procedure associated with an object are known as methods. So you must understand two things. Now onwards we are going to call method and attributes, that is variables. पहिला हामी मेथड भन्छ, देन एट्रिब्युट्स भन्छ हैन. अहिले हामी के भन्नु पर्यो अब वी कॉल इट एज variables and next one is method. Now next topic is, if you have understood object, you just go back to the slides, go back to my video and just think about a dog, right? Or bank. So bank ma, if you see, you can have a multiple kind of bank ko khata ni hai, bank ko account. You can have a fixed deposit account, you can have a recurring deposit account, you can have a saving deposit account, you can have n number of n types of that. And if you go to dog also has various breeds, you know, kunjai type ko dog ho, and if you want to separately keep it, German shepherds अलगै राख्छु, तिमीहरुको किचा कुकुर अलगै राख्छु, तिमीहरुको घरमा पाल्ने कुकुर अलगै राख्छु, ती सानो सानो भुचा कुकुर अलगै राख्छु, हचवाला कुकुर अलगै राख्छु भन्ने छ भने, then that's where one more introduction of a concept of oops comes into picture, that is known as class. Class भनेको, it's a collection of certain similar objects. Collection of certain similar objects. Now here in the example you can see person भनेको के हो? Person is a class. Why it is class? Because person is represented as a generic definition of Jane, Mitch and Shu. यो तीनजना person, तीनजना अलग-अलग मान्छे हो नि त हैन, तर they all are similar kind of attributes, similar kind of behavior छ. So त्यसलाई हामी के गर्दछ, एउटा क्लासमा हाल्दैछ पर्सन. जस्तो तिमीहरुलाई के गर्छ, we keep it in a student. Student मा पनि we can classify you as student of DCST 5th semester. So that 5th semester DCST becomes a class wherein there are multiple objects. So you become object in that particular class. Alright. So अब अलिकति twist पाराले if you think, what you can think is, you can think that okay, I can understand that a class is nothing but it's a template, it's a skeleton, it's a structure that is used to create the set of objects. मैले student भनेर मैले पहिला object सोच्छु नि physically हैन, physically student is an object, physically Andrew is an object, physically Sumiran is an object, physically Sunena is an object हैन, you are all object. तर तिमीहरु object भनेर मैले सोच्दाखेरि पहिला म के सोच्छु भन्दाखेरि student सोच्छु नि त हैन, you guys are student. So what will I do? I will create a template called student हैन. पहिला म student भन्ने template बनाउँछु जसकोमा नाम हुन्छ, जसकोमा कोर्स हुन्छ, जसकोमा एडमिसन नम्बर हुन्छ, जसकोमा मार्क्स हुन्छ, कुन चाहिँ सब्जेक्ट पढेको त्यो हुन्छ, all that attributes हुन्छ हैन. Student can sit and write exam हुन्छ, student can bunk the class हुन्छ, student can take issue book from library हुन्छ, so many behaviors पनि हुन्छ हैन. Student can play हुन्छ, student can exercise हुन्छ, student can read हुन्छ, write हुन्छ, so many behaviors पनि हुन्छ. So all that, like say, what we are doing is we are trying to keep it in a simple structure बनाएर हामी राख्न चाहन्छौं. That structure we call it as class. Alright, we call it as a class. So class is a static definition, a piece of code written in the programming language. अब मैले के गर्नु पर्यो, मैले अघि तिमीले सोच्दै थियो नि डग भनेर सोच्दै थियो. Dog is an object, yes. तर dog has variety of dogs or dogs, dog 1, dog 2, dog 3, dog 4 कति हुन्छ नि हैन. सो dog भन्ने चाहिँ मैले यहाँनिर चाहिँ आइपुगेछु के बनाउँदैछु त्यसलाई क्लास बनाउँदैछु. अघि बैंक भने नि मैले हैन, बैंक अकाउन्ट भने नि. बैंक अकाउन्ट होल्डर त म हो नि त. I become the object of the bank account. So बैंक अकाउन्ट के भयो मेरो क्लास भयो. मेरो जस्तै बैंक अकाउन्ट अरूले पनि त खोलेको हुन्छ नि हैन, in the same bank account. So something like that. So what I am doing is I am trying to create a code in a programming language that defines that particular class. So now once a class is created, the class are instantiated. The class are instantiated in the sense the copy of the class are created. In the sense class variables are created. In the sense objects are created. I understand this. Alright. So that's why in the last line it is written the objects are called instance of a class. So my dog 1 भन्ने बित्तिकै के हो, dog 1 जस्तो के हो, dog 1 को breed let's say Pomeranian हो भने त्यो dog 1 is the object of a big dog class. त्यो dog class भित्र German Shepherds पनि छ र त्यो हच वाला कुकुर पनि छ. Every कुकुर are there. Alright. So I hope you have understood this. Now another thing to add in the class is each instance will have its own distinct set of attributes. Meaning to say that तिम्रो स्टुडेन्ट पनि के हुन्छ आफ्नो आफ्नो स्टुडेन्ट को आफ्नो आफ्नो एट्रिब्युट लिएर बसेको हुन्छ नि त हैन. मेरो आफ्नै और एन्ड्रयू को आफ्नै मार्क्स हुन्छ, एन्ड्रयू को आफ्नै कोर्स हुन्छ, एन्ड्रयू को आफ्नै ड्रेस अप हुन्छ, एन्ड्रयू को आफ्नै रोल नम्बर हुन्छ. सिमिलरली रोल नम्बर, योर नेम, कोर्स एन्ड मोबाइल नम्बर चारटा प्यारामिटर सपोज छ अरे, चारटा एट्रिब्युट छ अरे. अर्को मान्छे लेट्स से याङचेन को त्यो चारटा अलग अलग उसले आफै बोकेको हुन्छ नि त, आफ्नोमा पनि हुन्छ नि. द्याट इज व्हाट दिस मिन्स. दिस मिन्स द्याट each object भनेको यहाँ चाहिँ अब each instance भनेको each object will have its own distinct set of attributes. Alright. So every instance of a class will have the same set of attributes. हैन, जे छ क्लासमा त्यो डल्लै आउँछ. अब क्लासमा चाहिँ बङ्क भन्ने चिजहरु हुँदैन नि त हैन. त्यो क्लास DCS 5th सेमिस्टर क्लासमा बङ्कहरु भन्नेहरु हुन्छ हुँदैन नि. सो but then sometimes you show that behavior, no? You show that behavior. त्यो चाहिँ कहाँबाट आएको भन्दा त्यो फाल्टु मान्छे आएकोबाट. त्यो चाहिँ फ्रेन्ड भन्छ. फेरि C++ फ्रेन्ड भन्छ. हामी जाभामा पनि हुन्छ त्यो. जाभामा we will see that later on. तर त्यो पनि आउँछ. अर्को एट्रिब्युट हो त्यो. अर्को बिहेभियर हो त्यो. त्योमा आउन सक्छ. Now each instance of a same class will have the same set of attributes. Each object has the same attributes, but each instance will have its own distinct value for those attributes. मैले अघि भनेको जस्तो Andrew will have Andrew को roll number and Yangchen will have Yangchen को roll number नि त हैन. But then attributes are same, roll number are same. तर भ्याल्यु मात्र डिफरेन्स छ नि. त्यो डिफरेन्स भ्याल्युले चाहिँ it distinctively identifies who is Andrew and who is Yangchen नि त हैन. That is what I wanted to tell you. Next is यो अलिक तिमीले पढिहाल्यो है. You understood this. We'll come to that this again later when we do constructors and in instantiation. अलगै गर्नुपर्छ. When we do programming we'll understand this. Firstly we must understand object creation. That means when a class is created objects are to be created. क्लास मात्रै छोडेर हुँदैन. क्लासले जहिले पनि के गर्नु पर्यो, object create गर्नु पर्यो. When objects are created those objects are the variables. So software मा represent गर्दाखेरि variable always will have a memory allocation. You know that. हैन. Variable will always have a memory allocation. So object को जति पनि fields are defined in the class, त्यो fields त्यो variables को लागि you need certain memory to be allocated. And initialization हुन्छ which is done by the constructor. We'll see that later on. Constructor पढ्दाखेरि you will know that. Yeah, you can go through this. The account class describes the attributes and behavior of a bank. The account class defines two state variables known as account number and balance, and the two methods deposit and the विथड्र ब्याङ्कको इक्जाम्पल मेरो त्यो भयो, त्यो क्लासको नाम के भयो, अकाउन्ट भयो हैन, क्लासको नाम के भयो, अकाउन्ट भयो। नाउ इन्स्टेन्स 1 मा मैले के गरेँ, अकाउन्ट नम्बर दिए 054, ब्यालेन्स दिए 19। इन्स्टेन्स 2 मा के गरेँ, नम्बर 712 एन्ड ब्यालेन्स दिए 240, समथिङ लाइक द्याट। व्हेन द प्रोग्राम रन देयर विल बी मेनी इन्स्टेन्स इन द अकाउन्ट। सो मान्छे आउँछ अकाउन्ट बनाउनुको लागि, इन्स्टेन्स 4 क्रिएट गर्छ, उसलाई अर्को सेपरेट अकाउन्ट नम्बर दिन्छ, उसको नाम अलग्गै हाल्छ र उसको ब्यालेन्स पनि अलग्गै हालिदिन्छ। सो यु मस्ट अन्डरस्ट्यान्ड दिस थिङ्स हियर in the object instantiation. Next is the important aspect of object oriented programming paradigm is your encapsulation. Encapsulation is a class itself, right? Class line, sometimes we call it as encapsulated. Encapsulation is a property. Class is the collection of the object. So class ma chai ke rakcha hami, we keep certain parameters that defines a particular object, हैन. So there we see that certain variables and methods are kept together in a single entity. We call it as wrapping up. मिठाईको खोलले र्याप गरेको जस्तो wrapping up of data and the method in a single entity is called as encapsulation. Right? So these variables and methods are hidden from outside. It is not visible from outside. Alright? When it is encapsulated, it is not at all visible from outside. So class भित्रै से उले it can be accessed. So that is what is the magic of your OOPS, no? So when I create the object ले डल्लै object को हुन्छ, सबै आफ्नो हुन्छ, अर्कोले के पनि गर्न एक्सेस गर्न सक्दैन. So एक्सेस गर्न सक्छ, बादमा we will see that how we can do that. Then a combination of collecting all the attributes of object in a single class definition combined with the ability to hide some definitions and the type information known as encapsulation. So the definition, so you can remember this definition. So you have to understand encapsulation is the encapsulated. It is the keeping things together in a single entity. Then you have this, you have withdraw, you have balance, you have deposit, you have this, all these methods are visible, but then the balance and the account number are not visible. Nobody can see balance and account number until and unless I execute balance bhanne method. When I execute balance bhanne method, I can see balance. When I execute account number bhanne method, I can see the account number. I can see the account number. Right? Yo account number हेर्नुको लागि we need something called as account number भन्ने एउटा function चाहिन्छ, method चाहिन्छ. Alright? So that is what is encapsulation. Encapsulation भनेको चाहिँ यही हो. Next is important thing you must understand in OOPS is instant methods and instance variables. So methods भनेको methods are the procedure, they are the action, they are the behavior of the particular object. Variables variables are those properties, those attributes that defines that particular object. So there are two things to understand. One is instance method and instance variable. So whatever I keep it in that particular class, when I define a class, when I define a student class भित्र म के हाल्छु, attributes हाल्छु नि. So those attributes now onwards we call it as instance variables. We call it as instance variables. And whatever behaviors I am keeping inside in the skeleton of the student class, कुनै पनि class, is nothing but your instance method. So now onwards we are going to call it as instance methods and instance variables. Okay. So these are nothing but the state variables. They are state variables because they are associated with one instance of a class. Right? Because a variable known as roll number is changed with every object. Roll number Andrew को अलगै हुन्छ, Yangchen को अलगै हुन्छ. That is why what we are trying to say is this defines a particular state of a particular object. Now when I give roll number as 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4 defines a particular state. Yes or no? So that is what we would like to put it across the concept of a class. Class भित्र राख्ने दुईटा चीज हुन्छ, एउटा मेथड हुन्छ, एउटा भेरिएबल हुन्छ. So now onwards we call it as, one is instance variable, other one we call it as instance method. So yeah, now बाकी चीज we will see later on, public, private and all that things we will see later on when we do go in depth of this particular things. But you must understand instance methods and instance variables also should be pronounced now onwards. Then we have something called class methods and class variables. We'll see this later on, right? Same cheez hai ho, variables and methods. We'll see this. But firstly we'll see we'll see the basic concepts of OOPS, which is inheritance. Inheritance is a very well known and understood kind of paradigm of style of writing codes, wherein one of the code can be used by the another. That means when I inherit, what do you inherit from your father? What do you inherit? You inherit a property, number one, and you also inherit father ko naak ko size, father ko height, father ko case. If your father is takla, you will also be takla. If father is very sharp and shiny, you also become sharp and shiny. Something like that. That is inheritance. The father ko le raako. So if something like that, if you want to represent in a software object, then we will definitely have to use a concept called inheritance. Superclass, subclass and all that definitions, we'll see that. Kind overriding, kind overloading, attributes and methods will be hidden somewhere. So we'll see that when we implement this inheritance in the program later on. Now basically you must understand as of now is we also have a concept called inheritance in OOPS that defines a particular property in certain class but can be inherited to other classes. Euta class banai मैले, I kept certain properties and attributes and behaviors. Arko class banai मैले त्यस्तै खालके, but then has a little bit of change. अलिकति tweaks मात्रै छ भने what I can do is I can inherit अघिको class. Then we'll see this when we do exercises. Then next is your message. But then you can go through these slides. Okay, you can just go through the previous slides and read about it. If you have not understood anything, you can just mention it. We will discuss it in the class. But go through that. I'm just skipping it. But then you have to go through this. Next important aspect of OOPS is message passing, we call it as. Alright, so messages are, what are messages? Messages are informations, isn't it? So they have to be transferred from one object to another object. Now for example, if I want something to be bought from Gangtok, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to call up somebody, isn't it? I must pass message the informations to somebody who is nearby Gangtok and say that, okay, you mero laidiana la bhane भने that fellow will go to that particular shop and say that this fellow needs this help, or this fellow has this kind of request. You must respond to this भने चाहिँ त्यो पैसा दिएपछि त्यो the other person will definitely respond to it and give a response back to the object. अर्को object ले लिएर आउँछ. Then that is how what it is. The message should be transferred from one object to another. Like for example, in this diagram you have manager and employee. Now how does manager communicates with an employee? Isn't it? What is the relationship between manager and employee? As simple as this. What is the relationship? The relationship is manager is supposed to hire the employee. Simple. यहाँ गरेको छ, है. employee is get hired by something called as manager. Then, so you must understand this. So there has to be a message passing mechanism in order to interact between the two objects. If there is no interaction, then your oops concept, it does not work. It is worthless band. Now if I have 2-3 objects, I must be able to communicate among the object. That's another parameter. Now you can go through this once. All right. Then next is what we have is polymorphism. Poly in the sense multiple. Morphism is multiple types. Multiple types, multiple behavior. For example, if I have a behavior called as draw, function or instance methods we call it as, your instant method say draw, suppose. Now I can draw this. I can use this draw instance method to draw a circle, to draw a square, to draw a map, to draw a whatnot, to draw to draw a nose, to draw a human being, to draw a dog also. But then नाम त एउटा मात्रै छ नि त हैन, draw मात्रै छ नि त, behavior त एउटा मात्रै छ नि त. That behavior can be exhibited with various types of object भनेको नि त त्यो चाहिँ हैन. That behavior एउटा मात्रै define गर्छु, तर it can be exhibited by multiple types of object. एउटा square kind of object ले गर्नु सक्छ, एउटा circle kind of object ले गर्नु सक्छ. So that is what is known as your polymorphism. We'll see this. We'll come to this when we do programming. Then another feature is, yeah, you can go through this. Just a definition हो यो overriding overloading. पछि आइहाल्छ फेरि क्लास पढ्दै जाँदाखेरि overriding overloading पनि. Then next feature is abstraction. Abstraction in the sense hiding. Information is hidden, abstracted. Why abstracted? Because like in the previous thing, you might have seen that you have a method called get account number, but you do not know the account number. You do not know the account number. त्यो भित्र पसेर उले account number कसलाई मागेर लिएर आउँछ, you do not know, and you are not interested also. For example, if you want to make a coffee, and if you want to make a coffee, अब के गर्छ, कफी बनाउनुको लागि you need a coffee making machine, vending machine चाहियो अरे suppose. Now if you go to coffee vending machine, what you must know? You must know how to pick a cup, isn't it? You must know how to click here and there so that your coffee is made. Then you click buttons here and there. After all, coffee त तिमीहरुको मगमा आइहाल्छ automatically. But you are not interested how that you are not interested and you should not know as a user, you should not know how that coffee vending machine works. भित्र कसरी काम गर्छ, you don't know, no, you should not know as a user. But as a programmer, as a designer of that coffee machine, we must know. So that is what is abstraction. So I know things, but I have hidden something unnecessary to the user. I am hiding it because त्यो पनि देखायो भने के हुन्छ, युजरले त कन्फ्युज हुन्छ नि, युजरले त अब हैन, युजरलाई चाहिँ कफी बनाउनु जाँदाखेरि चाहिँ तैँले कफी भेन्डिङ मेसिन पनि बनाउनु पर्छ अन्त मात्रै तेरो कफी आउँछ भन्यो भने त युजर विल नट बी इन्ट्रेस्टेड इन भेन्डिङ द कफी, नो? Yes or no? So that is what is abstraction. So we are hiding certain information from the user. Yes, obviously we are hiding it. त्यो पछि आउँदै जान्छ कसरी गर्छ हामी भनेर ल. Then reuse. Yes, it is anticipated. Reuse is there. Steve Jobs also has written certain codes which we are using here. Your Larry Page has written a good amount of codes which we are using it here. So UPSMA reusability is at the foremost level. Inheritance भयो हैन, codes are rewritten भयो, simple polymorphism भयो, एउटा मान्छेले लेखेको छ a function called click. I can use that click in submit button, I can use that click in close button, I can use that click same click in changing the color. So click the same way, somebody has written that click. So I'm reusing that particular code. So future ko lagi, if I'm using it, then it is known as the property of OOPS. Reusability as the property of OOPS. All right. So now, why do we use OOPS concept? I mean, we've seen this. Why do we use OOPS concept? Because we wanted to build certain complex system. Software engineering ma, we wanted to build certain complex system. That is why we are using OOPS, because OOPS has a procedure. Analysis and design of operating object-oriented systems are there. It is written. It is well adapted by software engineering fraternity. So it is easy to model a complex system. We can easily model it. That is the reason why we are using this object-oriented programming model. So in our class, we will be using Java as a language to exhibit this. All right. So I think this is the final last slide I am having. So I am winding up here. If you have any query, any questions, you can ask me in the next class. Okay. I'm closing this session. Bye bye.